The sun set behind the broken skyline of what was once a thriving city in America. Empty streets stretched out like forgotten veins, whispering stories of lives abruptly interrupted. Here, the silence was suffocating. It was a silence that made every survivor's heart pound with a mix of dread and determination. The undead roamed freely now, relentless and unforgiving, and with each passing day, the fragile hope of survival dwindled. Ethan Rivers stood on the rooftop of an abandoned apartment building, his eyes scanning the horizon through a pair of worn binoculars. He was a tall man, with a lean build honed by months of constant vigilance and running. His clothes were practical, worn but clean, and his face showed the kind of hard-won resolve that came from living on the edge of extinction. Behind him, the low murmur of a small group of survivors echoed in the narrow stairwell. Ethan wasn't alone. He was part of a small band that had taken refuge in this building, hoping to hold out long enough for something, anything, to change. "Ethan, you see anything?" called out Maya, a sharp-eyed woman with a scar that ran from her temple to her jawline, a permanent reminder of the dangers they'd faced. He lowered the binoculars, shaking his head. "Nothing. Just the usual patrols out there. The dead don't rest." Maya joined him at the rooftop edge, her gaze hard. "We can't keep this up forever. Supplies are running low, and the radio's gone silent. No help's coming." Ethan nodded grimly. "We either move forward or we fall apart here. I say we make a plan for tomorrow. Maybe head toward the river. Fewer undead there. Could be safer." A sudden noise made them both tense, a low growl, followed by the shuffle of feet. From the alley below, a small group of zombies appeared, their torn clothes fluttering as they moved with unnatural purpose. Their hollow eyes seemed fixed on the rooftop, as if they sensed the living nearby. "We've got company," Ethan muttered, reaching for his crowbar. The survivors scrambled to prepare, blocking stairwells and readying makeshift weapons. But then something unexpected happened. The zombies hesitated, then dispersed as quickly as they came, as if something else had drawn their attention away. Ethan lowered his weapon cautiously. "That's new. Zombies don't usually back down." Maya frowned, her instincts telling her this was a warning, not a blessing. Something's coming. And it's not just the undead. Back inside, the survivors gathered around a battered wooden table, lit by the weak flicker of a candle. The air was thick with tension. They knew the dead were only one part of the nightmare, other dangers lurked in the shadows, human and otherwise. "We can't stay here much longer," whispered Lucas, the youngest of the group, his voice trembling. "If the undead are shifting like that, what else are we missing?" Ethan met Lucas's gaze with a steady calm he didn't entirely feel. "We keep moving. We keep fighting. We find others who want to survive." The night stretched on with restless sleep and the quiet sounds of the city that had become a tomb. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, a rare reminder of life in a world overtaken by death. As dawn broke, the survivors packed what little they had left. Ethan checked his gear one last time, a sturdy backpack, a flashlight, and the crowbar that had saved his life more than once. Maya secured her makeshift spear, and the others armed themselves as best they could. The rooftop door creaked open, and Ethan took the first step into the uncertain light of morning. Each footstep echoed through the empty corridors like a challenge to the world that had tried to crush them. They didn't know what awaited them beyond the building, whether it would be salvation or the final chapter of their fight. But one thing was certain, in dead America, hope was fragile, but it was all they had left. And sometimes, that was enough to start a revolution. The streets were eerily quiet as Ethan led the group through the narrow alleys behind the crumbling buildings. The early morning fog wrapped the ruins in a heavy blanket, blurring the world into shades of gray. Each step felt like trespassing on forgotten lives, every broken window and scorched car a reminder of how fast everything had fallen apart. Maya stayed close to Ethan's side, her spear gripped tight. Lucas trailed behind, constantly glancing over his shoulder. Beside him, Reyna, the group's medic, clutched her bag of salvaged supplies, her eyes scanning for anything useful. "We stick to the back roads," Ethan whispered. "Avoid open streets. If we hit the river before sundown, We take shelter in the old marina. Assuming it's not already crawling with the dead, Maya replied. They moved in silence, a rule long since ingrained. Noise attracted attention. But the silence wasn't comforting, it was unnatural. The undead were rarely quiet for long. They passed the remains of a small convenience store. Its front had been shattered months ago, but something about it made Ethan pause. He motioned for the others to stop, raising a clenched fist. Inside the store, movement. Not the slow, twitching gait of the undead, but a different kind of tension. Controlled. Watchful. Ethan ducked behind a rusted newspaper rack and peered through the broken glass. A man, scruffy, armed, and alert, was rummaging through the shelves. Two others stood guard near the back door, both holding rifles. Not zombies, Ethan mouthed to Maya. Scavengers. Maya frowned. Or worse. Raiders? They watched as the group quickly packed supplies and exited through the rear door, disappearing into the mist. Ethan exhaled slowly. We move. Quiet. Now. They continued, cutting through overgrown yards and slipping through the skeletons of homes. As they reached an underpass, Lucas let out a sharp gasp. Ahead, tangled in barbed wire and barely alive, was a man. His clothes were torn, his face bloodied, but he wasn't infected, yet. One leg was mangled, and he looked like he'd been there for hours. Help, please, the man croaked, eyes wide with fear. Ethan hesitated. Time was precious. Noise was dangerous. But leaving a man to die? That was something he couldn't easily live with. Raina stepped forward. We can't just walk past him. Fine, Ethan said, kneeling beside the man. Quickly. They began cutting through the wire as Raina examined the injury. No bites. Just torn muscle and deep cuts. I can stabilize him, but he's not walking out of here. Maya scanned the road. We don't have time for this. We're exposed. A sudden groan echoed from the far side of the tunnel. More groans followed, low, guttural, unmistakable. Zombies. Too late, Ethan growled. Form up. The first undead staggered into view, its jaw slack, its face half-rotted. Behind it, a dozen more. Lucas raised his bat, hands shaking. There's too many. We hold this end. Maya shouted. Back to back. The group formed a circle, weapons ready. The first zombie lunged, Ethan swung his crowbar with precision, crushing its skull. Another reached for Lucas, but Maya drove her spear through its eye before it could make contact. More came. They fought in grunts and gasps, every blow crucial. Raina knelt by the injured man, shielding him with her body, jabbing at approaching undead with a kitchen knife. The tunnel echoed with chaos, flesh ripping, bones cracking, and the desperate cries of survivors refusing to fall. Just as it seemed they would be overwhelmed, a loud gunshot rang out from above. Then another. Zombies began dropping from sniper fire. The group turned, stunned. From the overpass above, the scavengers from the store earlier had returned. The scruffy man shouted, "Run! We've got you covered." Ethan didn't question it. He grabbed the injured man and slung him over his shoulder. Move! They sprinted out of the tunnel as bullets rained down behind them, cutting through the horde. When they reached the tree line beyond the underpass, the shooting stopped. The scavengers were gone. The group collapsed beneath the trees, breathing hard. The injured man coughed, then whispered, "Why, did you save me?" Ethan looked at him, his face grim but honest. Because we still have to believe we're better than them. He didn't say who them was, zombies, raiders, or the people who had let the world fall apart. But everyone understood. Maya sat beside him, eyes scanning the trees. We've been lucky so far. But we're not the only ones trying to survive. And not everyone out there plays fair, Ethan said, gazing back at the road. Next time, we may not get a warning. As night crept in, they prepared a cold camp under the trees, afraid to light a fire. Every shadow now felt like a threat. And somewhere in the fog, unseen eyes might still be watching. Ready for part 3? The survivors will encounter a new group, but not all alliances are as hopeful as they seem. The sky hung low with thick clouds as dawn broke across the forest. The trees stood like sentinels, guarding the battered group that had barely survived the ambush in the tunnel. Sleep had been scarce. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves kept their eyes open and weapons close. Ethan stared into the woods, still replaying the moment the strangers saved them. Their sniper shots had been too well timed, too precise. It didn't feel like an accident. He didn't like coincidences, especially not in a world like this. "We move in 10, he said, tightening the straps on his pack. Maya knelt beside the injured man, whose name, they'd learned, was Jonah. She adjusted the splint Reyna had fashioned from scavenged wood and cloth. "He can't walk. I can carry him another mile, maybe 2, Ethan said, eyeing the distant river on the map. "Once we hit the marina, we figure out our next move." Lucas kept lookout while Reyna packed up the last of their supplies. The boy had grown quieter since the fight. His wide eyes now held the weight of fear, and something else. Guilt? As they made their way through the woods, the group stayed close. The trees muffled sound, but Ethan's instincts were on edge. Someone was out there. Watching. By midday, they reached the edge of an abandoned highway overgrown with weeds. What once carried millions of vehicles now held only rusted skeletons of the old world. That's when they saw the flag, a makeshift banner of red cloth tied to a streetlight, fluttering in the wind. Beneath it stood 3 people, hands raised. Unarmed. Waiting. Ethan motioned for the group to halt. "Stay back." He approached slowly, crowbar in hand. A man stepped forward, tall, thin, with a calm voice and calculating eyes. "Name's Carter. You're the ones from the tunnel, right?" Ethan didn't answer. "We helped you. Shot half that pack for you. Figured we'd come introduce ourselves properly." Ethan kept his tone neutral. "Why?" Carter shrugged. "You saved someone. Most people would have left him. That tells me you've still got your humanity. We could use people like you." "Or you saw we had supplies," Maya muttered behind Ethan. Carter chuckled. "Fair point. But we've got more than enough. Come with us. You'll be safe." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "No one's safe." Carter nodded. "True. But we've got walls. A working generator. Clean water. People. Not a lot of places can say that these days." Reyna looked at Ethan, hesitant. Maybe it's worth checking out. Just to see." Ethan studied Carter's group. No weapons drawn, no aggression. But too clean. Too calm. That always came with a price. "All right," Ethan said. "We'll follow. But one wrong move. You'll break my skull, I get it," Carter said with a grin. "Let's walk." They followed Carter and his 2 companions down the highway and through an old service tunnel that led into a secure compound, surrounded by makeshift walls made from cars, wood, and debris. Inside were nearly 30 people, men, women, even children. A small community, trying to hold on to what little they had. Food was cooking. People were smiling. It felt like another world. Carter showed them around. "We patrol. We trade with 2 other camps nearby. No looters. No raiders. If someone steals, they're out. No second chances." Jonah was placed in a small infirmary where an older woman began tending to his leg. Reyna stayed close, offering to assist. That night, they sat around a fire for the first time in weeks. Ethan remained quiet, eyes scanning the faces around him. Something still didn't sit right. As the others relaxed, Lucas slipped away. Maya caught it and followed silently, stopping when she saw him near one of Carter's men, whispering. "Lucas?" Maya said sharply. The boy jumped, then stepped back. I was just asking about the place. That's all." Maya didn't believe him. Later, when everyone slept, Ethan found Maya staring at the sky. She told him what she saw. "He's hiding something," she said. "That guy he talked to, he was watching us all day. Not the friendly kind of watching." Ethan nodded slowly. "We stay one more day. Then we move. Something about this place, it's too perfect." But by morning, Jonah was missing. Jonah was gone. When Ethan woke before dawn, his first instinct was to check the infirmary. The cot was empty. The bloodied bandages were scattered across the floor. And the woman who had been treating him, the medic named Elsie, was gone too. Panic simmered beneath the surface. He didn't wake the others immediately. Instead, he stepped outside and scanned the courtyard. The community was just beginning to stir. A few people swept debris from the walkways. Children chased a dog near the supply shed. Normal. Too normal. But Jonah was missing. When Maya joined him, she took one look at his face and understood. Something happened, didn't it? He couldn't walk on his own. Someone moved him. They found Raina next. She had fallen asleep by the fire. Her eyes widened when she heard the news. He was getting better. He wasn't strong enough to leave on his own. Someone must have taken him. Ethan didn't waste time. He marched straight to Carter's quarters, an old portable office they had repurposed as a command center. 2 guards stepped in front of the door, but Carter waved them off and emerged, holding a cup of coffee like nothing was wrong. "Morning," Carter said. "Everything all right?" "Where's Jonah?" Ethan asked coldly. Carter blinked. "The injured guy? He was still in the infirmary last I checked." "He's gone," Maya said. "So is the nurse." For the first time, Carter's expression faltered. "Gone? That doesn't make sense." Ethan stepped closer. "You said this place was safe. So where did he go? Or more importantly, why would someone take him?" Carter sighed and glanced around. "All right. Come inside. Let's talk." Inside the makeshift command center, maps lined the walls, marking trade routes and safe zones. There was also a hand-drawn chart, lists of names, including ones with red marks next to them. Carter noticed Ethan eyeing it. "Look, I didn't want to say this yesterday, but there are people out there who don't belong in peaceful camps. People with sickness. Not the virus. A different kind. The kind that makes you dangerous before you even turn." Maya folded her arms. "Are you saying Jonah was dangerous? He came from another group. We've had trouble with them before. Thieves. Liars. Even killers. When he showed up, I had to be sure he wasn't one of them." Ethan's voice dropped. "So you took him in the middle of the night?" "I relocated him. To the outer perimeter," Carter said. "He's fine. Safe. But until we know more about him, he can't stay inside these walls." Raina shook her head in disbelief. "You didn't even give us a chance to speak up." "Because it's not about you," Carter snapped. "It's about protecting all of us." That was when Ethan saw it, fear behind Carter's eyes. Not fear of Jonah, but fear of being found out. Ethan stepped forward. "Take us to him. Now." Reluctantly, Carter agreed. He led them through a back gate, past the farming plots and storage tents, to an old service shack surrounded by fencing. A guard stood outside, holding a rifle. Inside, Jonah sat on the floor, his leg wrapped in clean bandages but his hands zip-tied. He looked up, dazed. "They said you left me. That you were going to keep moving without me." "They lied," Maya said, furious. "We never would have left you." Raina rushed to him, checking his pulse. "He's dehydrated. You left him here like some animal." Ethan turned to Carter, now standing in the doorway. "This isn't protection. This is control." Carter sighed. "Sometimes hard decisions have to be made. That's what leadership is." "No," Ethan said, stepping past him. Leadership is trust. Something you clearly don't have. He lifted Jonah up, supporting him on his shoulder. We're leaving. Carter didn't stop them, but his silence spoke volumes. He wasn't used to people walking away. And something told Ethan that walking away wouldn't be easy. They returned to the main compound to collect their things. The mood had shifted. People who had smiled yesterday now watched them cautiously, whispers trailing behind. As they reached the front gate, Carter appeared one last time. You won't last out there. We already have, Maya shot back. Carter gave a grim smile. The undead aren't the only monsters left in America. Some were friendly faces. Ethan didn't answer. He opened the gate and led his group back into the wild, Jonah leaning on him with every step. As they disappeared into the mist, Raina looked back once, her voice quiet. What kind of place claims to offer hope, but hides everything in the shadows? Ethan's answer was simple. One that's already dead inside. End of Part 4. Coming up in Part 5. The group uncovers an abandoned radio tower, where an intercepted transmission reveals a chilling plan in motion, and a horde being led, not by instinct, but by strategy. Ready to continue? The road was cracked and broken, covered in moss and silence. Leaving Carter's compound behind was supposed to bring relief, but it only deepened the tension. Jonah leaned heavily on Raina as they walked, his face pale and drawn. The group's food supply had dwindled to a few canned goods and 2 water bottles. Ethan pressed forward, scanning the tree-line for signs of movement. Shadows danced with the wind, and every rustle made them tighten their grip on weapons. Still, the forest seemed oddly calm. Too calm. By late afternoon, they stumbled across an old utility road marked by overgrown signs. A faded arrow pointed towards something half covered in vines. Tower Station 6B, U.S. Communications. A radio tower? Maya asked, stepping closer. Lucas nodded. Could be useful. Maybe even still working. Raina helped Jonah sit on a mossy log while the others debated. It's a risk, Ethan said, but it could have maps, supplies, maybe even a broadcast signal we can use to find other survivors. We should try, Maya insisted. We need to know if there's anyone left out there who can help. They followed the narrow path up the hill, where the trees thinned out to reveal a rusted metal tower reaching into the sky. The base station, half buried in foliage, had a shattered door barely hanging on its hinges. Inside, the air smelled of dust and mildew. Broken equipment was scattered across the floor. Desks had been overturned, and wires dangled from the ceiling like cobwebs. A shattered screen blinked faintly with a red light. Lucas wandered toward a console. Wait, this is still on. Maya stepped beside him. Can you make it work? I think so. As he tapped away, static buzzed through a nearby speaker. Then, a voice cut through. Zone 7 compromised, survivors scattered, no reinforcements, moving the herd north, control grid unstable. The group froze. Ethan leaned in. Rewind that. Lucas replayed the message. The voice was male, calm, and cold. It wasn't a distress call. It was a report. Someone was giving orders. Talking about the undead like they were tools, directing them. Moving the herd north? Raina whispered. Are they controlling them? Sounds like it, Ethan muttered. But how? And why? Another voice broke through, garbled but clear enough. Test Zone Omega proceeding as expected. Subject leaders responding to frequency modulation. Human settlements reacting predictably. Lucas stared at the equipment. This isn't just a signal. It's some kind of coordination channel. Raina's voice cracked. They're using the infected. Like weapons. Jonah groaned from where he sat. That explains the pattern. The waves of them. The way they came for us in that tunnel. They weren't just wandering, someone sent them. Ethan turned to the group. Someone's orchestrating this. Maybe a group. Maybe remnants of the government, or something worse. And they're using the undead to wipe out the rest of us. Maya looked pale. Carter's compound, do you think he knew? He had a radio, Ethan said. He had maps. He said too much about staying quiet and off the radar. Yeah, I think he knew something. Suddenly, a faint clicking noise came from the far side of the room. Lucas turned. What was that? The metal door to the back hallway creaked open on its own. They raised their weapons. From the darkness, a low growl echoed. Then came the thudding, slow, heavy footsteps, dragging across concrete. A figure emerged, an infected man, but different. His eyes weren't blank. They were focused. Locked onto Ethan. Back! Ethan yelled, opening fire. The shot echoed through the tower, striking the figure's shoulder. It didn't flinch. It lunged. Maya slammed a metal pipe into its legs, toppling it. Lucas kicked it back into the shadows while Raina grabbed Jonah and helped him outside. Ethan fired again. This time, it went down, but not before letting out a piercing scream that didn't sound like a zombie at all. Time to go! Maya shouted. They bolted from the tower, the scream still echoing behind them. The forest had shifted. Birds fled the trees. In the distance, low moans began to rise. Ethan stopped at the base of the hill and looked back. That thing, it wasn't feral. It knew what it was doing. Raina's hands trembled. They're learning. Or being taught. Lucas nodded grimly. And someone's listening. Someone's watching. Jonah, barely able to stand, looked toward the smoke rising in the far distance. Whatever's happening, this is bigger than survival. This is war. Ethan gripped his weapon tighter. Then it's time we stop running. The sun dipped low as the group followed the winding forest road toward the direction the signal had hinted at, coordinates buried in the static, barely caught by Lucas before they fled the tower. The broadcast hadn't just exposed a horrifying truth, it had given them a lead. By nightfall, the group came upon a wire fence, rusted but still intact, surrounding a cluster of concrete buildings half sunk into the forest. No lights. No sounds. Ethan crouched and surveyed the area. Looks like a military outpost. Hidden. Abandoned, or maybe not. Lucas stepped forward. Should we call out? Ethan shook his head. No. We don't know who's in there, or what they're doing. After cutting through a section of the fence, they slipped inside the compound. The interior was overgrown but structurally intact. A long tunnel led to a steel blast door, already cracked open. Inside, the walls were lined with monitors, many still glowing dimly, and stacks of data logs, maps, and sealed crates. Raina ran a hand along the table. This is way more advanced than anything we've seen before. This isn't just survival gear. This is surveillance. Lucas powered up one of the terminals. It hummed to life and flickered with a series of video feeds, cities, highways, and empty streets, all overrun by the undead. But then, one feed caught their attention, humans in white suits, inside a lab, observing restrained infected strapped to gurneys. The infected weren't thrashing. They were calm. Breathing. Obedient. Maya leaned in, horrified. They're experimenting on them. Then the screen shifted to a new scene, one that made Ethan freeze. A room with a podium. And behind it, a banner, NEP, New Era Protocol. The figure standing at the podium had no mask. He was clean, well-fed, and speaking to a camera. My name is Director Caldwell. If you are watching this, you've found one of our research nodes. Congratulations. You've survived longer than 97% of the population. The group watched, stunned. The infection, Caldwell continued, was not an accident. It was a reset. A recalibration of a system bloated by overpopulation, waste, and chaos. We've taken control. We are building the next phase, where only the resilient survive. And the undead? They are the filter. Jonah whispered, he's mad. But Caldwell's tone was measured, calm. You may think this inhumane. But in time, you will understand. The world you knew was already dead. We're giving birth to something better. Controlled. Efficient. The screen cut out. Lucas stepped back from the monitor, sickened. They did this on purpose. And they're still running it. Ethan clenched his fists. Carter knew. That's why he didn't want us near any radio tower. He wanted to stay invisible. Maya opened one of the crates. Inside were sealed vials, each marked with numbers and a symbol, an omega wrapped in a ring. She looked up. This is some kind of control serum. Maybe even the one they use to calm the infected. Or worse, Raina muttered, to command them. Suddenly, a light clicked on in the hallway. Then a door opened. A silhouette emerged, tall, armored, armed. Freeze, a deep voice barked. Everyone raised their hands. The man stepped closer, his weapon aimed at Ethan. You're not supposed to be here. Who are you? We could ask you the same, Ethan replied. The man's helmet hissed as it retracted, revealing a grizzled face, scarred and tired. Name's Lieutenant Mason. I used to be part of NEP. Before I realized what they were doing. You left? Maya asked cautiously. I escaped, Mason replied. Took some intel, too. They've been moving from outpost to outpost, tying up loose ends. Anyone who learns the truth ends up in a body bag, or worse, in a lab. Ethan lowered his hands slowly. We don't want trouble. But we need to stop this. Mason hesitated, then nodded. You've already seen too much. That makes you a threat to them. But it also makes you an opportunity. Raina frowned. What kind of opportunity? Mason motioned for them to follow. He led them deeper underground, to a hidden room sealed by biometric lock. Inside was a tactical map, marked with red zones, drone routes, and NEP strongholds. They're planning something big, Mason explained. A final sweep. They call it Protocol Ember, a coordinated push of infected herds toward the last unclaimed survivor zones. How long until it happens? Lucas asked. 72 hours. Maybe less. Ethan looked at the map. One of the red arrows pointed straight toward a cluster of survivor settlements, places they knew still had life. If they unleash another wave, Maya said, the rest of humanity won't stand a chance. Ethan turned to Mason. Then we don't wait. We fight. At dawn, the forest shivered with an unnatural silence. Not a single crow cawed. Not a single leaf rustled. It was the calm before something monstrous. Inside the hidden command room of the old outpost, Lieutenant Mason spread out the map and pointed to a marked facility deep in the industrial outskirts of what used to be Richmond. This is where they're controlling the herds. They're using sound lures and food trails to move them like cattle. If we're going to stop Protocol Ember, that's where it happens. Ethan leaned over the map, jaw clenched. We get in, disable their controls, destroy their systems, and get out. Maya raised an eyebrow. Just like that? Lucas added, we've barely survived zombie swarms. Now we're talking about storming a NEP base? Mason stared them down. You've all seen what they're capable of. NEP doesn't care who dies, as long as they maintain control. They've got labs underground and mercs above. But they're arrogant. They don't expect an attack from a handful of survivors. Raina, quiet for most of the discussion, finally spoke. If we don't try, they'll wipe out every last person still clinging to life. The settlements, the kids, the families, will lose everything. That sealed it. With weapons scavenged from the outpost armory, explosives repurposed from NEP storage, and blueprints Mason had memorized during his escape, they left before nightfall. By midnight, they stood at the edge of the compound. A cold wind blew through cracked windows of empty warehouses, and the air smelled faintly of oil, rot, and electricity. From a nearby ridge, the view confirmed their fears, rows of chained zombies swaying in rhythm, like they were waiting for instructions. Mason whispered, those aren't normal infected. See how still they are. They've been dosed. Sedated. Controlled. Reyna peered through her scope. And they're guarding them with humans. Heavily armed NEP soldiers patrolled the perimeter, dressed in white armor marked with the same Omega Ring insignia. Drones buzzed quietly above the fences, scanning the night. This won't be a fight, Ethan muttered. It's a war. They split into 2 teams. Mason, Lucas, and Reyna moved toward the south ridge, where the generator core controlled the sound emitters used to guide the herds. Ethan, Maya, and Jonah crept toward the command bunker beneath the compound, the heart of NEP operations. Time was running out. According to Mason, Protocol Ember would begin within hours. As Mason's team reached the generators, a drone spun suddenly, its spotlight sweeping toward them. Down! Mason hissed. They dropped into a trench just as the light passed overhead. Lucas pulled out a small pulse jammer Mason had rigged from scavenged NEP tech and activated it. The drone sparked midair and spiraled down, crashing into the dirt. That was the cue. They moved fast, planting explosives along the generator's support lines. Meanwhile, Ethan's group reached the command bunker. They slipped past 2 guards using smoke grenades scavenged from the outpost, and entered the core control room. The air inside was icy and sterile. Rows of monitors showed live footage, zombies being herded like sheep, settlements unknowingly surrounded, and a digital clock counting down. 2 hours 47 minutes and 12 seconds. Less than 3 hours. Maya hacked into the control console while Jonah stood guard. I can access the virus injection node, she said. We can corrupt the guidance system, but it'll only buy us time. Ethan glanced at the countdown. Time's all we need. Do it. As Maya worked, the alarms suddenly blared red. Unauthorized access detected. Outside, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out as NEP soldiers discovered the explosives and opened fire on Mason's team. The chained infected began to stir, groaning, twitching, reacting to the noise. Ethan shouted into the radio, "Status?" Mason's voice crackled back. "We're under heavy fire. Blowing the generators now." A thunderous blast rocked the compound. Smoke filled the air. The glowing lines that controlled the lures sputtered and died. Suddenly, the once docile infected snapped their chains and charged wildly, no longer guided, no longer sedated. Inside the bunker, Maya slammed her fist down. I triggered the disruption code. The herds will scatter, completely unpredictable. That's good enough, Ethan said. Let's go. They rushed back through the bunker, dodging bullets and fallen debris. Outside, chaos reigned. The infected turned on their handlers, tearing through NEP soldiers. The chain of command crumbled in seconds. Lucas spotted them through the smoke and waved them over. Trucks running. Get in. Everyone piled into the flatbed as the fires spread behind them. As they sped away from the collapsing facility, Maya turned back and watched the inferno. They wanted control, she whispered. Now they have none. Mason nodded grimly. And we've just made ourselves their top priority. Ethan, battered but alive, stared toward the horizon. Let them come. Smoke curled into the pale morning sky as the truck rolled through the remnants of what used to be farmland. The group was silent, bloodied, bruised, but alive. Behind them, the NEP compound was nothing but fire and screams. Ethan sat up front with Mason, watching the dirt road vanish beneath the tires. They won't let this go, will they? Mason shook his head. Not a chance. We just dismantled the largest NEP control facility on the East Coast. Their entire protocol failed. They'll come after us with everything. Reyna, perched in the back with her rifle across her lap, leaned forward. Then we take the fight to them. One last time. They had no illusions. The NEP was ruthless, well-armed, and already mobilizing. But they had something now they hadn't had before, hope. The scattered settlements had seen the sky light up from the explosion. The word was spreading, the NEP could be hurt. The survivors headed for a place known only as Hollow Rock, a cliffside stronghold built by rogue engineers who had defected from the NEP long ago. Hidden, fortified, and completely off-grid. It was the only place they could regroup and make their final stand. When they arrived, they found more than just walls. Dozens of people had gathered there already, farmers, ex-soldiers, medics, families, driven by the same purpose, to live free, no matter the cost. Ethan stood before them and told the truth. The NEP's not going to stop. They'll paint us as terrorists, traitors, and criminals. But we've all seen what they really are. We either wait for them to finish what they started, or we finish it first. A murmur ran through the crowd. Then a cheer. The survivors worked for 2 days straight. They reinforced Hollow Rock's defenses, buried mines along the access roads, and set traps throughout the surrounding woods. Drones were reprogrammed to scout for incoming NEP units. Maya even rewired an old satellite dish to intercept enemy signals. At dusk on the third day, Mason stepped out of the command shed, his face grim. They're coming. 10 armored trucks. Gunships in the air. ETA, 20 minutes. There was no time left. As the survivors took their positions, Ethan stood at the edge of the bluff and looked down at the long convoy kicking up dust on the road. Everything comes down to this. The first wave hit hard. NEP forces poured in, shouting commands and firing blindly. But Hollow Rock wasn't just a hideout, it was a trap. Mines exploded under trucks. Spike pits claimed soldiers. Snipers in the cliffs picked off the rest. But NEP had numbers. And firepower. Gunships roared overhead, strafing the walls. Explosions shook the ground as parts of the barricade collapsed. A second squad breached the east entrance. The fight turned into a brutal melee. Raina ducked behind a burning crate, reloading her rifle. They just keep coming. Jonah, manning a heavy machine gun, shouted, if they want to take this place, they'll have to crawl over our ashes. Meanwhile, inside the central bunker, Maya and Lucas struggled to override the guidance system of the last remaining NEP drone swarm. If I can just jam their uplink, Maya muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard, we can send the drones against their own troops. Lucas grinned. Now you're talking. Outside, chaos reigned. Ethan led the final push against the intruders. He sprinted into the middle of the battlefield, tossing smoke grenades and shouting orders. Cover the west flank. Don't let them breach the command tent. Then, in a flash of thunder, the sky lit up. Maya had done it. The drones turned, red lights flickering, and descended on the NEP forces with a storm of confusion and fire. The enemy ranks scattered. Mason, bleeding from a shoulder wound, looked to the sky. That's our chance. Hit them now. With a final, coordinated surge, the survivors overwhelmed what was left of the NEP ground forces. The gunships pulled back, unable to tell friend from foe in the blinding smoke and drone assault. Then, silence. The battlefield was scorched and broken, bodies and machines scattered like debris from a dying world. But Hollow Rock still stood. Later, as the wounded were treated and fires extinguished, Ethan stood with the others at the edge of the cliff. Below them, the land stretched far and wide, burned, broken, but free. We lost a lot, he said softly. But we proved something. That we're not just survivors, Maya added. We're fighters. Mason nodded. And Dead America just woke up. No one knew what the future would bring. But for the first time since the outbreak began, humanity had struck back, not just against the undead, but against the darkness inside itself. And for the first time, it felt like they might just win. End of Part 8, Finale. Let me know if you'd like a sequel or another story with a different theme or title.